There is a strange idea floating around Russian television. According to some very confident people sitting in Moscow studios, invading Britain would be easy. A few missiles, a few ships, a quick crossing of the English Channel, job done. One commentator even described the United Kingdom as a damp, miserable island that would sink in minutes. Now, if you've ever tried to sail across the channel in anything smaller than a floating apartment complex, you might already be smiling at that statement. Because here's the uncomfortable truth. Invading Britain isn't just difficult, it's one of the most complicated military operations imaginable. In fact, to successfully invade the UK, an attacker has to win 5 completely different wars at the same time. First, they must cross one of the most dangerous stretches of water in Europe, which, for the record, is harder than it looks. The channel has currents, storms, naval patrols, and radar coverage everywhere. These days, the only people regularly trying to cross it in rubber dinghies are migrants. And even that usually ends with the Royal Navy picking them up halfway across and giving them a cup of tea. Launching a full-scale military invasion in the same water, that's a slightly bigger logistical challenge. Then they must survive the Royal Navy. Then they must defeat the RAF over the Channel. Then they must land on a coastline that has been preparing for invasions for nearly 1,000 years. And even if by some miracle they pull that off, there's still a submarine somewhere under the ocean holding a set of nuclear launch codes. So when people casually say, why doesn't someone just invade Britain? The real answer is simple, because every step of that plan gets worse, much worse. And it starts with a very inconvenient piece of geography. Maps make the English Channel look small. Just a thin strip of blue between Britain and France, about 20 miles at its narrowest point. You could almost imagine someone standing on the cliffs of Dover with binoculars saying, "Oh look, France is right there," which makes it seem like crossing it should be easy. Except the channel isn't just a bit of water, it's one of the most hostile amphibious invasion routes in the world. The tides are violent, currents twist in multiple directions, storms roll in quickly, fog can reduce visibility to almost nothing. And the shipping traffic is so dense that it's basically the maritime version of the M25 during rush hour. Trying to move a massive invasion fleet through that environment would be like attempting to drive an armored convoy through Times Square on New Year's Eve while someone is actively shooting at you. And that's before Britain even starts defending itself. History has already tested this problem several times. The Spanish Armada tried in 1588. They had more ships, more guns, and the confidence of an empire that controlled half the world. The English Navy harassed them, storms tore their formation apart, and the fleet limped home in pieces. Then came Napoleon. He spent years assembling an invasion force on the French coast. Thousands of boats, hundreds of thousands of soldiers, and yet the crossing never happened. Why? Because the Royal Navy was sitting out there waiting. Then came the big one. Adolf Hitler controlled almost all of Europe. France had fallen. The German army was standing on the coast, staring directly across the channel. If there was ever a moment when Britain looked vulnerable, this was it. The invasion plan even had a name, Operation Sea Lion. But there was one problem. Actually, several problems. The first one flew. Before German soldiers could cross the channel, the Luftwaffe had to destroy the Royal Air Force. And on paper, the Luftwaffe looked terrifying. Thousands of aircraft, experienced pilots, momentum from blitzkrieg victories across Europe. But Britain had quietly built something revolutionary, a system that completely changed how air wars were fought: radar. The British called it Chain Home, a line of radar stations stretching along the coast that could detect enemy aircraft long before they reached British airspace. Picture a German bomber formation taking off from northern France. The moment those aircraft climbed into the sky, British radar operators could already see them, which meant British fighters weren't wandering around the sky hoping to bump into the enemy. They were directed straight toward them. Every interception was calculated, efficient, controlled. It was like trying to rob a bank where the security cameras can see you leaving your house. German pilots crossed the channel again and again, and again and again they ran into Hurricanes and Spitfires waiting exactly where they needed to be. The Luftwaffe lost aircraft, pilots, momentum. And without air superiority, Operation Sea Lion collapsed before the first German soldier even stepped onto a boat. Now fast forward to today. Britain's air defense network is no longer a chain of radar towers and telephones. It's a layered system of satellites, long-range radar, AWACS aircraft, Typhoon fighters, F-35 stealth jets, and missile defenses. Which means if someone tried to launch a modern invasion fleet, the RAF would see it forming before the ships even left port. And that leads us to the second problem, because even if you somehow survive the channel and somehow survive the RAF, you still have to deal with the people who actually own the water, the Royal Navy. And historically speaking, this is where invasion plans go to die. If you want to understand why invading Britain is such a nightmare, you need to think about what amphibious invasions actually look like. Movies tend to show heroic soldiers charging up beaches. In reality, amphibious warfare is mostly about logistics. Slow, fragile, painfully exposed logistics. Picture hundreds of transport ships packed with soldiers, vehicles, ammunition, fuel, medical equipment, food, engineers, and spare parts. Not sleek warships, floating cargo containers filled with everything an army needs to survive once it hits land. Those ships move slowly. They cannot maneuver quickly. And if they start sinking, the invasion collapses very quickly, which brings us to the Royal Navy. Now, people sometimes assume Britain's navy is smaller than it used to be. That's technically true. The days of hundreds of battleships roaming the seas are long gone. But what replaced them is far more dangerous. Modern naval warfare is less about how many ships you have and more about what those ships can see, track, and destroy. And Britain is extremely good at that. At the center of the fleet are two aircraft carriers, HMS Queen Elizabeth and HMS Prince of Wales. These aren't museum pieces. Each carrier operates F-35B stealth fighters capable of launching precision strikes hundreds of miles away. So imagine you're an invading force assembling a fleet somewhere on the European coastline. Before those ships even start moving, British intelligence satellites probably know where they are. When the fleet begins to sail, submarines begin tracking it. When it approaches the channel, carrier aircraft begin circling overhead. By the time those transport ships are halfway across the water, they're no longer a fleet, they're a target range. And the most dangerous threat isn't actually the big ships, it's the ones you can't see. Somewhere in the cold water around the British Isles, there is almost always an Astute-class submarine on patrol. These are among the quietest submarines in the world. They can track enemy ships from dozens of miles away. They carry heavyweight torpedoes designed to break large vessels in half. And they're extremely good at staying invisible, which means an invasion fleet wouldn't just be sailing toward Britain, it would be sailing into a hunting ground. Submarines are particularly brutal against amphibious operations because of one simple problem. Transport ships don't fight back well. Destroyers and frigates can try to hunt submarines, but the cargo vessels carrying thousands of soldiers, they're basically floating warehouses, slow, loud, vulnerable. And you don't need to sink many of them. Just one large transport going down in a crowded sea lane can create chaos. Now multiply that by several torpedo hits. Suddenly, ships are maneuvering wildly to avoid collisions. Rescue operations begin. The formation breaks apart. Landing schedules collapse, and the invasion force that was supposed to arrive in organized waves begins arriving in fragments, if it arrives at all. This is exactly why amphibious invasions are considered one of the most difficult military operations in existence. They require perfect coordination across air, sea, and land. Lose control of even one of those domains, and the entire operation starts falling apart, which is exactly what happened to Germany in 1940. But suppose, just for the sake of argument, that the attacker somehow survives the submarines. Suppose they dodge the naval strikes. Suppose they make it across the channel. Now comes the next unpleasant surprise. Because Britain spent the last 1,000 years assuming someone might try this again, and they built their coastline accordingly. During World War II, Britain expected a German invasion almost every day, so they transformed the southern coastline into something resembling a giant defensive obstacle course. Thousands of pillboxes were built along beaches and cliffs. Anti-tank barriers were placed across likely landing zones. Artillery batteries were installed overlooking coastal approaches. Roads were rigged for demolition. Fields were prepared to flood. Entire towns were mapped for defensive fighting. Even railway bridges were pre-planned for destruction. It wasn't just a military defense, it was a national one. More than 1.5 million volunteers joined the Home Guard. Farmers, shopkeepers, retired soldiers, accountants who suddenly found themselves learning how to operate machine guns. The idea was simple. If someone landed on British soil, they wouldn't be stepping into open countryside. They would be stepping into a country that had already decided it would fight everywhere. In streets, in forests, in cities, in back gardens if necessary. And that mindset hasn't exactly disappeared, because modern Britain may not have pillboxes on every beach anymore. But the defensive logic remains. An invading army would face something even worse than coastal defenses. It would face a densely populated island full of urban terrain. And urban warfare is where invading armies go to suffer. Cities turn military advantages upside down. Large armored formations lose mobility. Air power becomes limited. Supply routes become dangerous. Every street becomes an ambush opportunity. Every building becomes a potential firing position. Now imagine trying to control a country where the capital alone has nearly 9 million people. London isn't just a city, it's a maze. Tunnels, railways, underground infrastructure, high-rise buildings, historic districts with narrow medieval streets. An invading force wouldn't just be fighting soldiers, it would be fighting geography. And that brings us to another uncomfortable reality for any attacker, because Britain wouldn't be fighting alone. Now imagine somehow that an invasion force survives all of that. The Channel, the RAF, the Royal Navy, the submarines, the coastline, the cities. At this point, most invasion plans would already be collapsing under their own weight. But Britain has one more advantage that makes the entire idea even more unrealistic. Because invading the UK wouldn't just mean fighting Britain, it would mean fighting half the planet. The moment a hostile military force attacked British territory, a very boring legal document suddenly becomes the most important piece of paper in the world. NATO Article 5. In simple terms, it says this: an attack on one member is an attack on all of them, which means if Britain were invaded, the response wouldn't come from London alone. It would come from Washington, Paris, Berlin, Warsaw, Rome, and about 24 other capitals. Suddenly, the invading force isn't dealing with the British military. It's dealing with the combined industrial, naval, and air power of the entire NATO alliance. American aircraft carriers would move toward the North Atlantic. French submarines would start hunting. European air forces would begin reinforcing British airspace. Supply routes across the Atlantic would open immediately. Within days, the invasion force wouldn't be facing one country. It would be facing the largest military alliance in human history. And here's the really uncomfortable part for any attacker. All of that response would happen before the first troops even landed, because Britain is part of one of the most powerful intelligence networks on Earth. Behind the scenes, 3 British organizations quietly monitor the world: MI5, MI6, and GCHQ. One focuses on domestic security. One runs global intelligence operations. The third is a signals intelligence giant capable of intercepting and analyzing communications across entire continents. Together with the United States, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand, they form the Five Eyes Alliance. This is essentially the world's most advanced intelligence sharing network. Satellites, undersea cables, cyber monitoring, electronic interception. It's the reason British intelligence often knows about military movements long before they appear in headlines. So, if a country began assembling hundreds of ships, aircraft, and troops for an invasion, it wouldn't stay secret for very long. Satellite imagery would pick up the buildup. Signals intelligence would detect the communications. Financial networks would notice the logistical purchases. The entire operation would start leaking signals weeks, sometimes months before it actually happened. Which means by the time those ships left port, Britain wouldn't be surprised. It would be waiting. But even that isn't the final layer of the problem, because there is one last deterrent that sits quietly beneath the ocean, and this one changes the entire equation. Somewhere under the Atlantic Ocean right now, a submarine is on patrol. You won't see it, you won't hear it, and you won't know exactly where it is, but it's there. One of Britain's Vanguard-class ballistic missile submarines. Each of these submarines carries Trident nuclear missiles capable of delivering multiple nuclear warheads across thousands of miles. Britain operates a system called continuous at-sea deterrence, which means at least one of these submarines is always deployed somewhere in the world's oceans. Always hidden, always ready. And the purpose of that submarine is brutally simple: to make sure no one ever believes they can destroy Britain without consequences. Even in the absolute worst-case scenario, if Britain were somehow overwhelmed, if communication with the government were cut off, those submarines still carry sealed instructions. Letters written by the Prime Minister, orders explaining what to do if the country itself has been destroyed. Retaliate, stand down, or coordinate with allies. No one knows exactly what those letters say, but everyone knows they exist. Which means any nation considering an invasion of Britain must face a final reality. Even if you somehow crossed the Channel, even if you somehow defeated the RAF, even if you somehow survived the Royal Navy, even if you somehow occupied British territory, there might still be a submarine somewhere in the dark carrying enough nuclear firepower to erase entire cities. And that's the moment when invasion plans stop looking like strategy and start looking like suicide. So, when Russian television confidently claims Britain could be conquered in a few days, it sounds dramatic. It sounds bold. It also ignores about 1,000 years of very stubborn history. Since 1066, dozens of powers have looked across the Channel and imagined how easy it might be to cross. Spain tried, Napoleon considered it, Hitler planned it. None of them succeeded, because Britain isn't just defended by soldiers or ships or aircraft. It's defended by geography, by alliances, by intelligence networks, by a navy that still controls its waters, and by submarines quietly patrolling the oceans with the final word on escalation. Which is why the United Kingdom remains what it has been for centuries. Not an easy target, not an open doorway, but an island fortress sitting just far enough away to make invading it one of the worst military ideas anyone could have. And history has a pretty consistent message for anyone who forgets that. Crossing the Channel is easy. Winning on the other side is the part that never works.